Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Israel Hawkins. Well, of course, we have the North Korea and South Korea today. We're going to be talking about them getting together for the first time in over a decade, looking towards some type of a peaceful resolution. We have the South Korean leader actually going to visit the Pope recently. Also, opioid overdoses are on the rise. And of course, we have the recent victory of President Putin, again winning the election for Russia, and President Trump giving him a call to congratulate him on that. But first, we're going to start off in the U.S. Opioid overdoses have risen over 30%, as we said, in just a year, showing that the problem is getting worse, not better. Well, according to the CDC, the nation is in a fast-growing epidemic for which they say are no easy solutions. Well, throughout the country, several states have been hit hard with the increase in opioid-related overdoses. In fact, Illinois has seen a 66% increase, Pennsylvania 80% increase, Delaware 105% increase, in Wisconsin 108% increase in overdose-related ER visits, and that's just to name a few.
Well, Dr. Ann Schukat, the acting director of the CDC, said, "We're seeing increases across all geographic regions in both men and women and all adult age groups." Now, according to the CDC, overdoses kill about 5 people every hour in the U.S. Dr. Schukat said that the potency of the drugs are leading to more deaths, not an increase in users. Now, Dr. Weiner of Linden Oaks Behavioral Health said that over 90% of people who are treated in rehab will relapse within a year. So those are not very great statistics.
That is very high. Well, a fentanyl prescription is partly to blame for the death of a 32-year-old woman, Sarah Fuller, who was planning her wedding. Well, she was prescribed the drug Subsys that is indicated for cancer patients because of not cancer, but she had back pains, back problems. Yeah. The mother said that they were never told how lethal the drug was, and of course they are filing legal actions against the drug's maker, Insys. A recently unsealed document has shown a federal indictment indicating that the drug maker bribed doctors with perks and payments to prescribe more of that drug Subsys to patients.
The indictment, it states, a series of doctors were convinced to push aside their ethical obligations and prescribe a drug for profit to patients who turn to them for help. Now, 5 Manhattan doctors are now facing up to 20 years behind bars, paid more than $800,000 combined from Insys. Now, also 2 Insys executives secretly pled guilty for their involvement last summer. Now, there has been an over 260% spike in the use of the drug. That's 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
Yeah, that's sad when people actually have like a chronic pain and they go to their doctor to try to find some type of relief. They end up getting hooked on a narcotic that, as in this case, eventually can take their life. It has the potential to do so.
And the doctor giving up their ethical obligations in exchange for the profit.
Yeah, just for a little bit of money. Yeah. Well, Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland shooter, has been indicted 3 weeks after the shooting that took place recently in Florida. He has been indicted on 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted first-degree murder. Behind bars in isolation, he's been described as withdrawn, but other times smiling and giggling. Prison observers have taken note of Cruz's behavior, including him staring at the ceiling and even asking to read the Bible on one occasion.
Well, North Korea has said that there is no reason to pursue nuclear program if there is no threat of an invasion, referring to the U.S. occupation in South Korea. Now, this is seen as a 180-degree turnaround by the North Korean leader. As a result, the two leaders of North and South Korea will hold their first joint political summit in a decade in April. Now, not everyone is excited. U.S. President Donald Trump is quoted as saying, "As far as the risk of dealing with a madman is concerned, that's his problem, not mine."
Senator Lindsey Graham said all the damage that would come from a war would be worth it in terms of long-term stability and national security. Well, even though the U.S. paused military exercises during the Olympics, as soon as the games were over, well, the tanks and planes were back out in force once again. Although the two are meeting, that is North and South Korea, the U.S. says that a meeting can only be arranged with them via Beijing if the North agrees to give up their nuclear weapons.
Of course, Pyongyang says that demand is preposterous. Analysts say that it doesn't look like the administration wants to create an atmosphere of peace, which is really strange, Katan, because that's really what they've wanted to do the entire time, for the North to give up their nuclear program. Now they're saying they're willing to, but it's like the U.S. doesn't want that. They almost want the war.
That's right. And you would think that they would go ahead and use their ally, the South, to work with the North in meeting certain terms to find a peaceful solution. Right. Well, the South recently sent one of its representatives to meet with the Pope on a recent trip. We have our correspondent Larry McGee, who has more information for us on that and a few other things. Larry, what do you have for us?
At some point, every government has to pay a visit to the Pope. This week, the ambassador for South Korea arrived to bow the knee and quickly informed the pontiff that he keeps him in his prayers. In keeping with tradition, the two exchanged gifts. It was a piece of artwork was offered by Ambassador Lee, while the Pope chose to present the Korean diplomat with a 3-volume set of his main papal documents. Thereafter, the meeting became private. The ambassador is not the only South Korean diplomat to be dispatched to the Seven Hills. President Moon Jae-in, special envoy to the Vatican, returned home from a trip recently, which was reportedly arranged, at least in part, to deliver a letter from President Moon Jae-in to the Vatican asking for its intervention on the Korean peninsula. The Pope is said to have responded by expressing an awareness of the conflict in the region and is reported to have advised the envoy that dialogue and negotiation must come before force. The diplomat stated that the purpose for his pilgrimage was to secure South Korea's interests, and having returned now, he is said to be satisfied with the results. The results of increasing tensions between the nations is war reaching into the heavens. This week, President Trump announced plans to create a special space force extending the hostilities of warfare into outer space. In a speech, the president stated that space is a warfighting domain just like air, land, and sea. And in support of that belief, General John Hyten of the U.S. Strategic Command stated that there is no war in space, just as there is no cyber war. There's only war, he said, and war can extend into any domain. And it might also be added that it can take many different forms. The EU is recalling its envoy to Russia over suspicions that Moscow may have been the culprit behind the recent poisoning of Sergei Skripal. The attack on the former double agent has prompted strong condemnation from Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May, who stated before a meeting that she will be raising the issue with her counterparts. The Prime Minister says the incident in Salisbury is a part of a pattern of aggression against Europe and its near neighbors, extending from the Western Balkans to the Middle East. Meanwhile, the man being hailed as one of Russia's strongest leaders to date is celebrating his 4th re-election as Russia's president. President Putin's allure among voters is reported to be his tough style, a reflection of which was demonstrated in his recent announcement that Russia had developed a new nuclear weapon, the declaration of which was accompanied by a video showing warheads headed for Florida. Now that he has won re-election, the Russian leader has dialed back the aggressive rhetoric and is back to sharp statecraft, announcing that Russia has no plans for an arms race and plans to cut military spending in pursuit of international dialogue. while China, Cuba, and Venezuela are all said to have called President Putin and offered their congratulations. It was said that the U.S. would be doing no such thing. In contradiction to that initial statement, though, President Trump told reporters recently that he called the Russian head and did congratulate him on his victory, while also mentioning the possibility of the two meeting at a later date to discuss the arms race, the Ukraine, Syria, North Korea, and various other things. During the press conference, the president reiterated his intention to keep America militarily superior several times, and also confirmed for reporters that Iran is still a target. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, it looks like the president might have changed his mind on calling Putin to congratulate him, but he certainly hasn't changed his mind on wanting to be the superpower when it comes to military.
No equal, he said.
Well, President Trump unveiled his plan to start putting tariffs on Chinese imports. He said there would be as much as $60 billion in tariffs applied to products that come into the U.S. from China. Now, the announcement raised fears that a trade war on Wall Street could result. Those fears led to the Dow losing 724 points to close at almost 3% lower than the day before.
That's right. Currently, there is a trade deficit of $375 billion with China, which means that China is making more on its imports to the U.S. than the U.S. is making on its exports to China. This is largely due to China's low cost of labor and trade policies, which President Trump says unfairly favor Beijing.
As far as the trade war goes, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross tried to assure the country by saying, "We will end up negotiating these things rather than fighting over them." Now, the Chinese embassy, however, did not use the same tone in response to the tariffs. They accused the president of, quote, ignoring the rational voices and adding, China is not afraid of and will not recoil from a trade war.
Analysts are calling Trump's announcement the trigger that could lead to a tit-for-tat trade war which would be bad for, of course, both countries. But the president feels he is really just fulfilling another promise he made to voters on the campaign trail. He also is concerned that Chinese firms will steal U.S. technology patents and then manufacture similar products at a cheaper price.
But China is also the largest holder of America's $21 trillion in debt. Now, with that kind of leverage, adding tariffs to China is causing anxiety among Republican congressmen. Charles Grassley, a senator from Iowa, told reporters, "I would advise our people in the executive branch from the president on down to be very cautious how you approach it."
China is warning the United States to reconsider its plans before things get worse. In response to U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum that have already went into effect, China is now proposing its own tariffs on 100 U.S. products.
Well, the U.S. exports include fresh fruit, nuts, wine, steel pipe, as well as pork and recycled aluminum. The total cost of these products is about $3 billion, which would then become more expensive in China and could cause American farmers and companies to lose business.
Well, the Chinese ambassador to the U.S. stated Beijing's position when he went on state TV explaining the possibility of a trade war. He said, "As far as a possible trade war is concerned, we never want it to start. But if somebody imposes a trade war on us, we'll fight to the end."
The administration has 15 days to decide which Chinese imports will face the new tariffs. Then it will be at least 30 more days before those tariffs actually go into effect. Now, that gives both countries some time to find other solutions to their problems. However, they both have to be willing.
That's right. Well, in other news, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was visiting the United States this week and had a meeting in the Oval Office with President Donald Trump. With cameras flashing and video rolling, the American president proceeded to highlight the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that Saudi Arabia has recently invested in U.S. military equipment. Let's listen to what the president had to say about Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor to have the Crown Prince with us. Saudi Arabia has been a very great friend and a big purchaser of equipment and lots of other things, and one of the biggest investments in the United States is their, I guess it's your big investment, is buying stock in companies and various other things in the United States and creating jobs. We've become very good friends over a fairly short period of time. I was in Saudi Arabia in May, and we are bringing back hundreds of billions of dollars into the United States, and we understand that, and they understand that. Some of the things that have been approved and are currently under construction and will be delivered to Saudi Arabia very soon, and that's for their protection. But if you look in terms of dollars, $3 billion, $533 million, $525 million, that's peanuts for you. Should have increased it. $880 million, $645 million, $6 billion, that's for frigates. 889 million, 63 million, and that's for various artillery. Some of the things that we're now working on, thanks, and that have been ordered and will shortly be started in construction and delivered. THAAD system, $13 billion. The C-130 airplanes, the Hercules, great plane, $3.8 billion. The Bradley vehicles, that's the tanks, $1.2 billion. And the P-8 Poseidons, $1.4 billion. And what it does is it really means many, many jobs. We're talking about over 40,000 jobs.
Katana, it looks like President Trump was really highlighting the fact that this agreement between the United States and the Saudis is leading to a lot of revenue for America and also creating jobs.
Yeah, one thing that wasn't highlighted, though, that weapons of war usually ends in loss of life for the victims. And speaking of the Middle East, Israel is in the spotlight again, this time for something that took place almost 11 years ago. Until now, Israel's policy on its bombing missions have been to keep silent. However, it was recently no secret that Israel destroyed a Syrian nuclear reactor back in 2007, similar to another attack on an Iraqi reactor in 1981. But they have never officially acknowledged the airstrike.
Now, the Israeli government is openly taking credit for the strike and for the first time has released details of the operation, including cockpit videos of the actual airstrike, which took place on September 6, 2007. Now, the reactor was nearing completion when a bombing campaign completely annihilated the solitary facility that sat along the Euphrates River. And what's really interesting about this, Katan, is the fact that Yisrael Hawkins has been mentioning certain dates and time frames, and with the news, you don't always see that something took place immediately, but it'll come out like this one did 11 years later saying, we made this attack. And really exactly in that same time frame that Yisrael Hawkins had mentioned.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, he's also shown that the prophecies have shown in the Holy Scriptures that these things would start in and around the great river Euphrates, and that's exactly where that took place. So something to take note of if somebody is actually looking for answers. And if you are looking for answers, you can write the House of Yahweh and, of course, request your free copies of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how. You can write the House of Yahweh by writing them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494 or visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. And to email the House of Yahweh, you can write them at info@yahweh.com. For all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget the free online programs that will aid you in your study of the Holy Scriptures and understanding prophecies as brought forth by the House of Yahweh in this time period by going to the Yisrael Says program, or YisraelSays.com, and the Ask Yisrael program by going to AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another exciting message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.